In 2025, is $1,000 a week really enough to live off in Australia? It seems like one of those numbers that sounds decent on the surface, and it seems like enough to get by, but I think if we look deeper, it's actually not the case. And this isn't going to be one of those rants about how everything sucks and that nothing's affordable anymore, but I just want to break it down properly, like literally do the math, because a lot of people like myself would hear $1,000 a week and assume that you're set, nice clean number, nothing too small. If I heard someone was making that amount of money, I would think they've got room to move, to save, to enjoy life a little. But realistically, in this day and age, I don't actually think $1,000 will stretch too far. And that's only factoring in the basics like rent, food, bills, transport, and all that just sort of adds up really quickly. And I feel like even if you work super hard in a week, you might be left with nothing by the end of it. And I just want to note that I'm not going to be taking into account any extra stuff, like nights out, occasional treats, or even saving up for something bigger down the line. I'm just talking about the bare bones minimum cost of living. So yeah, I'm gonna get right into the biggest factor, and that's obviously rent. Now, some people can own a home, they could be paying off a mortgage or something like that. But I think for the majority of people below 30, you're probably renting or even thinking about moving into a rental. And man, rents can be one of the biggest chunks of your weekly budget, and if you were earning $1,000 a week, it can take a huge part of that. And the reality of rent prices in Australia is crazy right now. And here's the median price of rent for the 4 big cities. For Sydney, you're looking around a median rent price of around $775 a week, which is actually insane to think about, because the median is literally the middle number, which means 50% of rentals cost more than $775 a week. That's even insane that I'm saying that. Obviously it varies depending on the suburb, but for a general ballpark figure, that's probably what you could expect. Now, Melbourne's a little less. You're looking at a median price of $580. Brisbane, you're looking at a median price of $750. So kind of close to Sydney. And Perth has actually shot up a bit, and you're looking at around $700 a week. So like if you do the math on those numbers, add them all together and divide it by 4, you're at an average of around $700 a week. But again, this really depends on where you live in. Rent could be more and rent could be less. And I get it. If you rent in rural areas, it's probably heaps cheaper, and you're probably not paying a premium for being close to the city. And realistically, these rural places can be rented anywhere from like $350 upwards. So just for the sake of the video, I think around $550 a week is a good price point for what I think rent is on average around the country. And that's being generous and assuming that you're not in one of the major cities. But even with that reduced cost of $550 a week, it's still a significant portion if you're earning $1,000 a week. Like that's already 50% gone. Now, obviously another human necessity is groceries and food. So once you've got your rent sorted out, it's time to think about like what sort of food you need for the week. And let's be real, food is one of those expenses that no matter how much you try to cut back, it still ends up eating into your budget. Grocery stores in Australia are absolutely ripping people off lately. Like that's no surprise. I've talked about it before. But seriously, prices have skyrocketed, and it's not because of inflation, man. Stores just seem to be constantly increasing their prices on everyday items. In fact, the average price of a grocery shop in Australia has jumped over 10% in the last year alone. And again, with something like groceries, it's not about what you can afford, it's about what you have to pay just to eat, because we all gotta eat. So yeah, for this math, I'm gonna keep it real basic. We're just gonna assume we're eating the 3 same meals for 7 days straight, just the essentials, and we're not adding all the extra stuff that you just throw in your basket for fun. So yeah, I'm gonna break down a standard grocery shop in Australia real quick. So I'm gonna need breakfast for 7 days. I'm gonna keep it real simple. I'm gonna buy a box of cereal from Coles or Woolworths, which is insane prices these days. You can probably expect to pay around $8, $8 to $10 for a big box of cereal, that is. Not those small boxes of cereal that you eat in like 3 sittings. And obviously I'm gonna need some milk for that cereal. And you can get a 2-liter bottle for like $3, but you might even need more than 2 liters. So realistically, let's just say you're spending $5 on milk too. So for a week's worth of breakfast, that's about $10 to $15, but that's also assuming that you're not buying coffees to go with it or anything like that. And if you're someone who's grabbing a coffee on the way to work, expect to pay like $5 or $7 for a basic takeaway coffee. So if you buy that $5 coffee every day on your way to work, that could cost you $25 for the week. Alright, moving on to lunch, gonna keep it super simple as well. We're literally just gonna make salad sandwiches. Like most people would be able to get away with that, right? And again, even for the case of the video, we're keeping it super simple to do the super simple math. A loaf of bread will probably set you back around $3. That's probably gonna go stale halfway through the week, so you might need 2. So that's $6 for bread. And of course, veggie prices always vary and stuff like that, but you're probably gonna spend another $15 on veggies to add into the sandwiches. And of course, you probably want some sauce or like some mayo or spread or something for your sandwiches. That's gonna set you back another $1.05. So for the week's worth of lunch, you're looking at about like $15 to $20, probably even more. But let's be honest, sometimes you forget your lunch like at work or something, or you just can't be bothered. So you're hungry and you're going to go to like a local cafe or a fast food spot, and you can expect to pay at least $15 to $25 for one person, and for something basic too. If you're Australian watching this, you probably know a place called Mad Mex, and I actually went there on the weekend, and just for a burrito bowl, I paid $15. And this burrito bowl, I'm not even lying, was a tiny serving. It was literally one scoop of rice, one scoop of protein, one scoop of corn, and a bit of salsa, and a little bit of lettuce, and barely any cheese. That's probably not even real cheese. Like, all that for $15. I didn't even get a side dish or a drink. So if you're doing that every day, it's definitely going to stack up. But again, I'm not adding that to the equation. We're simply talking about those sandwiches. And moving on to dinner, I'm gonna keep it super simple. Probably the only thing I can cook is some spaghetti. Pack of pasta is around $2. Realistically, if you're going to eat it for 7 nights, you need like 2 packs. You got to get the pasta sauce in the jars as well, and maybe some veggies to throw in there or something like that. So realistically, that's like 4 dinner. And of course, everyone needs snacks, man. You can't forget them. That little extra something to keep you going between meals, whether that's a block of chocolate or some chips. But in Australia, these snacks are getting overpriced like crazy too. God forbid I want a block of chocolate and I have to fork out $8 for it. Even chippies, man, that's just expensive. A whole bag's gonna set you back $6. So just for the sake of this video, you're probably spending an extra $10, $15 just to satisfy your snack cravings. So realistically, you're probably spending close to $100 on groceries every week, and that's the bare minimum. Just the essentials. And that's not factoring in any meat or higher end items like fancy snacks or pre-prepared meals or anything like that. And just remember, if you skip out on these home cooked meals, you're going to be paying a pretty penny for the food at the stores. All right, moving on to another cost, and that's transportation, because this is one of those areas that really adds up fast, especially if you drive. So let's just say the average person is commuting around 15 Ks one way to work. That's about 30 Ks a day just to get to and from your job. And if you're working 5 days a week, that's 150 Ks of driving every week. Now, fuel prices in Australia are sitting around $1.50 to $2 per litre, depending on where you are. So let's just assume that the price per litre is around $1.80, and your car uses about 8 litres per 100 Ks, which I think is pretty average. I'm not too sure. So for your 150 K per week commute, you're looking at about 12 litres of fuel for the week. So 12 litres times $1.80 is around $22, and that's just to get to work and back. We're not talking about anything else. You still got to think about maintenance costs, stuff like tire repairs, which seem to happen when you least expect them. Like, I actually ran over a nail the other day, and I had to pay like $50 for a tire repair, and that's the kind of unexpected expense that can throw you off the course and you're not prepared for it. And I'm not even talking about car insurance either. If you're under 30 like me, you're probably at an average of about $30 per week just for car insurance. And in Australia, car insurance is a non-negotiable. And then there's parking, like if you have to pay for parking. And that can really depending on where you are. If you're in the city, you're probably paying heaps. But smaller towns, rural areas, you're probably not paying for parking at all. But for the sake of this video, let's just assume you need to pay to park at your job. And it's probably like $10 a day or something like that. If you're working 5 days a week, that can add up to $50 in 1 week. So again, realistically, this whole cost can add up to like $100. I'm talking car insurance, fuel, parking, all that sort of stuff. And keep in mind, this does not include random repairs and things that pop up. This is also not taking into account public transportation fees if you want to catch a train somewhere or something like that. It's not taking into account toll roads. It's just the bare bones of transportation if you own a car, assuming that you already own a car outright already. Then we're moving on to the boring one, which I don't really understand, and I can't really argue the price of these things, but I'm talking utilities and bills. Like, it's crazy that even just living in your own place costs money, and it's one of those things that slowly bleeds your wallet dry every single month without you even realizing how much it's adding up. So I think realistically, on average, if you're living in Victoria, you're looking at around $130 a month for electricity. And I'm just reading now that if you're in Queensland, that's closer to $150 a month. So you're looking at around $40 a week just for the power to keep your lights on and your phone charge. And of course, that number is going to vary depending on how many people live with you or how careful you are with your energy. But even being super careful, I don't know, I feel like these companies can just lie to you and just throw you whatever number and you just have to pay it. Then of course, there's internet, which isn't even a luxury anymore. It's a straight up necessity, whether it's for work, entertainment, or just keeping up with life. You can't not have it in the year 2025. I feel like the average NBN plan in Australia is going to run you around $80 a month. And don't even get me started on providers like Telstra. Like, bro, I was with Telstra and they just randomly upped my bill by $15 one month. No warning whatsoever. So I go through this whole mission, calling them, sitting on hold for ages, so I could drop down a tier of internet speed or like internet plan, thinking, yeah, sweet, I'll save a bit of money. So I lock that in, I do that. My speeds go down, which sucks, but you know, I'm saving $15 a month. And then I feel like literally the next month, the next bill rolls around and it's back up to the original price. So the same amount I was paying before, but now I just have worse internet. Like, imagine going out of your way to downgrade something just for the company to then finesse you anyway. Like, it's really cooked. So if we're being real, between electricity and internet alone, you're looking at about like $200 a month, probably a little more, $250 a month. So that's about $50 a week. And that doesn't even touch on gas or water bills, which also come knocking eventually. Like, utilities really feel like a side cost, but they are honestly a real chunk of your budget. And look, even if you're doing everything right, like you're paying your rent, you're buying groceries, you get into work, covering your bills, all that sort of stuff, at some point, you're going to want to live a little, you know what I mean? You're going to want to unwind in some way or do something that reminds you that you're not just working and surviving and repeating the same thing every week. So I'm going to just start really small. Let's just say you got a couple subscriptions. Maybe you got a Spotify subscription and an Xbox Games Pass subscription. That's already like $30 a month. So roughly like $8 a week. Not a crazy amount, but it does add up. Now let's say that you want to catch up with some homies, have some drinks. That can really set you back like $35-50 literally for just a couple drinks, and that's on the low end. So let's average it out and say you're spending about $40 a week just to do a social thing sometimes. Then of course there's a little random purchases here and there, grabbing an Uber because it's raining or something like that. Like, those things always creep in. So let's just add another $15 for the week, so we're being conservative. So yeah, that's probably around like $60 a week, $70 a week. And again, that's a super tame version of like having a life. Like, this is not you buying concert tickets, this is not you traveling, not you shopping, not you paying for a couple games or apps that you enjoy. And like, yeah, you can cut all this stuff out, but what's the point of working all week if you have no time to enjoy things? Like, yeah, we're doing the quick math here, but we're also doing heaps of mental math, the kind where you're constantly calculating whether you can afford to say yes to plans or buy a treat or something like that. And I feel like that shit can really weigh you down. And again, all this math we've been doing, it just assumes you already have everything. Like, we're not talking about trying to buy a car. We're assuming you already own one, fully paid off. Same with your phone, your computer, your TV, your Xbox, or whatever you have. None of that is factored in. I'm not factoring in any other monthly repayments. No saving up for like replacements or things that break. I'm not factoring in buying in new clothes or anything like that. And it's crazy, but I'm not even factoring in healthcare, like whether you need to see a dentist all of a sudden or something like that. It's literally just the bare bones of rent, food, bills, and a tiny bit of having fun, because even that already stretches the $1,000 to its absolute limit. And it really puts things into perspective. Like, yeah, you can technically survive on $1,000 a week, but at what cost? And it's crazy I'm saying that, because when I was a kid, I would have thought that $1,000 a week is crazy money. So yeah, just coming back to the math we did, if you're making $1,000 a week, you have to take around $550 for rent, probably another $100 for groceries, another $100 for transportation, utilities probably about $50, and lifestyle probably around another $50. That's $850 of your $1,000 a week gone. 85% of your $1,000 income just for you to survive and to continue working. And again, you haven't done anything extra, no splurging, no treating yourself, just the basics. Like, that damn near leaves you with only an extra $100 a week. Now, let's say you do that every week for a year, 52 times $100, you're only going to be able to save $5,200 a year. That's what you have left for the year. It feels like you've got no money for emergencies, no savings, no money for holidays. That is literally the total sum of all your hard work after covering the absolute essentials. So yeah, I really just wanted to break this down for you, because it's insane that we live in a time where $1,000 is not going to really do anything for your future. It's just going to sort of allow you to live right now and work right now. But yeah, man, it's crazy out here. I'm gonna wrap the video up here. As always, I appreciate you watching the video, especially if you've made it this far, because I think this has been a long one. All my links are down below, that being my Instagrams, my streaming platforms, my Twitter, and my clothing brand Memory Faded. And yeah, man, that's it from me. It's been Once Faded. Peace.